Yeah. Um, Hello. Uh, Thank you, everyone, for still being around. How's everyone feeling? Do you have information overload yet? Being a bit later in the day for the presentation always means you deal with a lot of tired people. But yeah, I'll try to make this interesting. The advantage of being a bit later is that you get a chance to react and respond to some of the previous talks. So yeah, I will try to get our take on the economic situation of the e-commerce industry. I will also obviously talk about page speed and stuff like time to first byte. Also, I'm going to try to answer a question whether tackling page speed could be a growth hack for e-commerce companies. So yeah, that's my presentation today. My name is up there on the slide, as well as Stefan's name. We initially planned to do this together, but we decided one guy talking for 20 minutes, that's enough. So yeah, I'll jump right into it. The title of the presentation is The Load Speed and the Impact on Commerce Metrics in Crisis Situations. So I'm kind of implying that we are having a crisis here, and maybe this is something we should look at, because we started this day off with exactly that question. Where is e-commerce headed, and is it in a crisis situation? And I mean, you're all reading the news just like I do. I put some articles up here that I found interesting. Maybe we'll start left to right. That chart pretty much shows what Alex has talked about this morning. Essentially, 20 and 21 have been some really strong years for e-commerce, but now we're kind of going back to pre-pandemic growth. So e-commerce is still growing, definitely. It's a very luxury situation, but the hype is over, is what I would say to that. And we can see this in the other news as well, where we've got lots of layoffs in the tech industries. A lot of companies are struggling, and this is not only in the news. I think we're all facing these sorts of conversations with customers where budgets are getting tighter. So this is a reality. And if we look into the future a bit, what are the projections for 2023? There's lots of studies and research being done that consumer spending, is going down a bit, and therefore e-commerce is also going to struggle a bit more. And yeah, my summary is sort of on the right side there. So as I said, the hype is over. Growth is back to pre-pandemic growth. So I would say back to normal. Also, something interesting that I hear a lot in my customer conversations is that during these times of a lot of demand, many companies have done a lot of investments, additional infrastructure, but also stuff like building new logistics facilities or something to cope with the demand. So a lot of money has been invested, and now you're going back to the demand that you had before the pandemic. So that puts you in a bit more economic pressure, challenges that are there. So we're seeing layoffs and declining demands and tighter budgets. So I would actually say, yeah, challenging situation. We got to be a bit more careful for the future, but growth is still there. So it's still a great industry to be in, and it's still a lot of things we can do. So that's kind of my next question here. What can we still do to drive value in 2023 and going into the future? And yeah, I've made a few suggestions on this slide. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to run your business, but these are some things that we found useful to go into the future. Obviously, first of all, you got to optimize your resource planning. I hope you're already doing this. I hope everyone is aware of the economic situation and you're thinking about where you spend your money, where you put your people, where you put your skills, and do all that. So this is the obvious one, I would say. The next one that we are sort of recommending is try to go for some low-hanging fruits, because it's a very quick shifting environment that we are in. You never know how long this economic decline is going to last, or maybe it's going to be over tomorrow, maybe it's not even coming. But if you focus on quick wins then and materialize on them quickly, that can help you in the short term and move you forward. The next one is sort of related to that. If you can maintain flexibility, that gives you all the options down the road. So this is certainly something to focus on. And something that we talk a lot about recently is to think about capital expenses versus operational expenses. So in your capital expenses, you are buying assets, hardware, infrastructure, long, big projects that are certainly, good to do in some situations and will pay off on the long run, but they really cut down on your flexibility. And therefore, if you can somehow, somewhere in your business, change the focus and maybe focus more on operational expenses by, for example, subscriptions and services and cloud-based services. I mean, we are all on a NFQ summit, and one of the biggest advantages of working with NFQ is that you can flexibly scale up and down and only pay what you need. So this is something that we highly recommend in the current situation. So a few suggestions here. And the next question I have with you is whether page speed can also be a part of the solution, whether it can be a growth driver for you in 2023. And yeah, for this, quick summary why page speed is important. I would say there's 3 categories of reasons. All the way on the left, you see the user experience part of it. Essentially, users hate slow websites, they'll just bounce off. You lose customers, you lose money. Money is the next part. There's countless studies and examples about how faster websites earn more money. The most quoted study is by Amazon that 100 milliseconds faster page speeds results in 1% uplift in revenue. So that's quite impressive. And the third one, rather recent, I would say, not super recent, but since a couple of years, page speed is also a ranking factor in Google. And this one I'd like to unpack a bit more because it's not very known and public yet. Here's a massive slide with a lot of data. So yeah, let's take a minute to unpack that. Google measures page speed by a metric called largest contentful paint, which is essentially the point in time in your loading process where you see the biggest visual input of your page. And Google measures that because it's a very user-specific, user experience-centric metric. Because the user doesn't care when the last script on the bottom of the page finally loads. The user wants to interact with the page. And Google says if you can deliver that in 2.5 seconds, then that's good. So you get a green area there. If it's between 2.5 and 4 seconds, that's medium. And if it takes even more than 4 seconds, that's really bad. And I've put a selection here of, I think, the 30 biggest e-commerce companies, or most successful e-commerce companies on the German market. And you see some of them are doing quite well, and some other ones have quite some room for improvement. And now, why is this important? We get to the other side of that slide. Google has introduced this as a ranking factor in 2021. And there's a company called Systrix who's done analysis on how well these different websites rank. And you see, I think, blue in the middle is the average website, and then green ones are particularly good ones, so I guess the top of the table, and red ones are particularly bad ones, more on the bottom of the table. And yeah, you can see a really big difference, really. If you're better than the average, you get a bit nudge up, but if you're worse than the average, you get really punished. So yeah, page speed is really important here and can be a big driver and can be sort of a growth hack to drive more traffic to your website. Now, we are doing SpeedKit, and we offer a solution that can help with this problem of page speed. And I want to quickly give you a summary how we actually do that. This kind of sums it up all in one slide. The important thing to understand is that it's based on browser and cloud technology. So it runs in the browser of the user and then connects to our SpeedKit cloud and delivers the website fast from there. And this is important because this means we don't actually need to touch the code of the original website. We don't have to interfere much. And this makes it also really easy to implement. Basically, we can go live within a week. And another big advantage of being browser and cloud-based is that we can even A/B test the results that we are delivering. So we can make it measurable, make an A/B test, show how the user experience increases, and you see a higher SEO rank, a better user experience, less bounce, more traffic on your page. And this also obviously results in these improved business metrics like higher add-to-cart rates, higher conversion rates, more revenue, and so on. So pretty much SpeedKit in a nutshell. Now, some of you might be thinking, well done, Thies, nice sales pitch. What's behind it? Can you also walk the talk and deliver on that? And to give it a bit more substance, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we actually do, what's behind it. Because after all, you know, this is the business track, but after all, it's still a tech conference, so I'll allow myself to give you a bit of a view what's under the hood. Here we can see in schematics how a page load works. So you see the browser does a request, goes to the backend via the network. Backend has to think about it a little bit, see what we need to deliver, what we need to give back to the browser. This goes back over the network, and then the browser can start to execute and render. And there's many things that could go wrong here. Essentially, in the browser, you could have big, heavy JavaScripts who are blocking the rendering. On the network level, you could have lots of issues if, for example, some files are not optimized very well and are clogging up the network. But also in the backend, you can deal with some problems. Something that's really typical in e-commerce is that you will have highly dynamic websites. So you have stuff like user-specific product recommendations, or dynamic pricing, or product availability. And once you've got these things, you can't cache that. That can't be cached in the browser, can't be cached on the network. You have to talk to the backend to get these things from there. So e-commerce is kind of slow on that by nature, and you can't really do anything about these things that you can't cache. Now, what does SpeedKit do then? As I mentioned before, it's based in the browser. The technology that it's based on is called service workers, so that's PWA technology. And then we've also got a cloud that it connects to and gets the content from. And the backend, the original backend, doesn't need any changes. So we essentially are loading a version of the website from the SpeedKit cloud into the browser that is anonymized. So what I mean by this is all the dynamic content, like user-specific product recommendations or dynamic pricing, is with placeholders in this version of the page. So because there are placeholders in there, this means that version of the page, again, is the same for every user, and therefore we can cache it on the cloud level or even in the device. So this can be delivered super fast. We have a much faster time to first byte than you would usually have. And then in parallel, we will load the website again from the original backend. Will take much longer this time, but once that finally gets into the browser, in the meantime, the browser could already render the page and could already display all the content, and the user already had a good user experience, and then the dynamic content is being swapped out. So that's kind of the trick, how we make even highly dynamic websites cacheable in a way. I have a quick example for you, because this was super theoretical, to show it with an example. So here we got SpeedKit in the browser and in the cloud. We're starting to load the page, 2 parallel requests. The SpeedKit request will answer first. You get the page, the browser can start rendering, you can see the shoe, you can look around. Second request takes longer, and you see the shoe doesn't yet show what's the price, or also the personalized banner on the top is not there. And now, watch out, once that request responds, now we see the price, and for the user, it's not really visible much. It just pops in a bit later, while the user could already focus on what's important. So yeah, that's pretty much the big trick, how we can even make highly dynamic websites of e-commerce faster. And there's even more. This is just one of the features. We also do stuff like automatic image optimization. Since we are based in the browser, we know a lot about the device of the user, can deliver the picture in the perfect size and perfect format. We can also do predictive preloading. If we look at our cache utilizations and lots of other factors that we can track, we can, before the user clicks on something, already have a pretty good idea of where the user might click next, and therefore we can preload that content into the device of the user even before the user does the click, and that saves a lot of time, of course. And we can even accelerate third-party tools. Third-party tools is also usually a huge pain for performance because you have to build these additional connections to the Adobe servers, the A/B Tasty servers, the Google Analytics servers to load the dependencies from there. But we can save that by also just delivering all these JavaScript resources from our cloud directly. Yeah, so this is kind of what we do. We, in a way, add a bit of rocket science to your website. And I mentioned to you earlier that I wanted to walk the talk. And therefore, I've also got some success stories to share for you. We've done this for a number of companies by now. Some of the biggest ones you can see here, where we've improved the speed for BMW in 118 countries. We've done this for Decathlon in a lot of countries as well. They achieved the ROI on our solution within 2 weeks. And also, Carhartt is one of our bigger customers. We've been live with them after 1 week, which really shows the plug-and-play nature of our tool. I think I have a few more minutes, so we can dive a bit deeper into another customer story that gives us a bit more flesh. This is S. Oliver, one of it's a large German fashion retailer, and here you can see the performance before SpeedKit and after SpeedKit in this Google metric that I mentioned earlier, where before they only had 46% of fast users according to this metric, and after it was 73%. We also see the time to first byte all the way up in the corner. This is a histogram where you can see the distribution of the users over the time that it took them to achieve this time to first byte. And you see a really nice shift to the top left corner, where now most people have a time to first byte of less than 200 milliseconds, I would say. And before, a lot of them had more, around 500 milliseconds. So that's a very pretty move over. And most exciting, those 3 metrics down there, we've also increased their business quite a lot. We've done a long-term project over a couple of months where we've analyzed these metrics a bit closer. And we had a 3.4% uplift in add-to-cart rate, 2.8% uplift in conversion rate, and a 5.9% uplift in revenue. So yeah, I would say SpeedKit really does walk the talk. And with that, I'm done. This is my last slide. I hope you enjoyed it a bit. I hope you might consider talking to us, because someone asked me the other day why I'm here, what's your plan to do during this week in Vietnam. And the reason why we're here is we want to connect to you. We want to talk to you about how we can bring value to your customers, how you can deliver a quick win to your customers and build trust that is really important. Something that Tore from Webwikinger told me about why he's really happy about our partnership. And we want to build more of these partnerships. We want to ideally have fruitful conversations with all of you. So thank you very much for listening. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Do we have any questions from the audience? Questions, yes. Frank.
Yes, good question. So you're asking, how does the software know what is dynamic content? And the truth is, there is a certain approximation that we can do beforehand, but we also have a team of performance engineers who will actually do a tailor-made custom configuration for every customer. And from there, it's also a managed service where our performance engineers will be alerted if something changes and regularly update the configuration if you need to. But this is technically necessary because every website is different and every website can change all the time, and we need to make sure to account for that.
Are you happy with the question? Okay. Any more questions for Thies? Guess not. Yeah, Lam.
Yes, a good question as well. So you're essentially asking whether SpeedKit works globally and whether it's going to be same fast globally. And the answer is yes. 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 Yes, great question. So it's kind of a technical answer, but we use several caching layers. And the best caching layer that we heavily optimize on is the browser cache. Usually, you don't have control over your browser cache, but with SpeedKit, with the service worker technology, the service worker has its own service worker browser cache, and we can very much control that. So we serve about 80% of our content directly from the browser cache, which means that even if you're in a fairly remote location, if we can deliver the cache from within the browser of the device, this means you can get a fairly fast page load. But the next best caching layer after that is a CDN network, so geographically distributed infrastructure. We are partnering with Fastly for that. So I think the next endpoint around here will also be probably Singapore, Bangkok, Hong Kong, something like this. And yeah, if you have a cache miss in your browser, then they will connect to Fastly. And the geographic infrastructure works like this, that we can reach everywhere within, I think, less than 200 milliseconds. So it works globally, as shown by our customer BMW in 118 countries, even mainland China, actually.
Does that answer your question? You happy? Okay. If you want to ask more, you know, he's here with us until Saturday. Yeah. So thank you so much, Peace, for the presentation. Thank you.